The 1st of October, 1960, 4-year-old Raymond Eugene Brown slipped through the unlocked back door of his family's home in Ashland, Alabama. He wasn't there to visit, he was there to steal. He didn't break into a stranger's house that night. He entered the home of his aunt, grandmother, and great-grandmother, women who loved him, trusted him, welcomed him at their dinner table. When his aunt, Berta May, discovered him stealing, she became his first victim. 123 stab wounds later, she was dead. But Raymond wasn't finished. He moved through the house, methodically killing the other 2 women to eliminate witnesses. Before we dive deeper into this disturbing case, please take a moment to like this video if you find it informative and subscribe for more true crime content. Your support helps us continue bringing you these important stories that demand to be told. The 11th of January, 1946. Raymond Eugene Brown was born in Ashland, Alabama. He was one of 4 sons of Marvin and Emma Lou Brown. His childhood seemed normal, and nothing about his early years stood out as unusual. Family and friends would later struggle to explain what Raymond became. They remembered him as a happy child with a regular upbringing. No one saw any warning signs of the darkness that would later define his life. At Clay County High School, Raymond looked like a typical small-town success story. He played on the junior varsity football team, did well in sports, and was popular with classmates. His teammates accepted him, and most people described him as friendly and well-liked. There were no signs of trouble. Nothing in his behavior suggested that anything was wrong. Looking back years later, those who knew him tried to find clues they might have missed. But the truth was simple. There weren't any. Raymond gave no hint of what he would one day become. The 1st of October, 1960. On this autumn evening, 4-year-old Raymond Eugene Brown made a decision that would forever alter his life and devastate a family that loved him. His motivation was shockingly mundane. He wanted money to buy football cleat. The target was a house where his relatives lived. 3 1-year-old Aunt Berta May Martin, 6 3-year-old grandmother Ethel Ogle, and 8 2-year-old disabled great-grandmother Evana Ogle. These were women who had welcomed Raymond into their home countless times. Raymond entered through an unlocked back door, moving quietly through the familiar house as the women slept. When his Aunt Berta May was awakened by sounds from the kitchen and discovered him burglarizing their home, Raymond's response defied all logic. Instead of running away, the teenager attacked his aunt with a kitchen knife. What followed was not a moment of panic, but sustained methodical assault. Raymond stabbed Berta Martin 123 times. The number itself tells a story of uncontrolled rage, but the pattern suggested something more disturbing: deliberate, systematic violence. Having crossed the ultimate line, Raymond now faced what he perceived as witnesses. He moved through the house to the rooms where his grandmother Ethel and disabled great-grandmother Evana slept peacefully. He stabbed both elderly women multiple times until he was certain they were dead. Then, in acts that revealed the depth of his depravity, Raymond slashed all 3 victims' throats from ear to ear. 3 generations of women who had loved and trusted him lay dead by his hand. The following morning, Raymond's mother, Emma Lou Brown, made the horrific discovery. When police arrived at the crime scene, they found multiple bloody heel prints throughout the house and evidence of violence so extreme that veteran officers struggled to process what they were seeing. The case focused on Raymond when police interviewed his classmates. Some told investigators that he had mentioned visiting his aunt after soccer practice. 5 days after the murders, officers found Raymond in the school gymnasium and took him for questioning. Raymond didn't protest his innocence or claim self-defense. He confessed to the murders with a matter-of-fact demeanor that disturbed everyone present. He recounted the circumstances and details with the same tone someone might use to describe their daily routine. There was no breakdown, no tears, no indication that he understood the magnitude of what he had done. His fingerprints matched those found at the crime scene. The confession sent shockwaves through Ashland and beyond. The entire community was forced to confront the terrifying possibility that evil could exist without obvious symptoms. The case quickly became a sensation that drew attention from across Alabama. In the days following the discovery, souvenir hunters descended on the crime scene, attempting to break into the house. According to authorities, More than 600 cars from 18 counties throughout Alabama and 9 other states converged on the small town. On the 10th of October, the Clay County Prosecutor's Office faced a decision that would set a precedent for violent juvenile offenders. Raymond's attorney petitioned that his client be tried in juvenile court. Prosecutors demanded he be tried as an adult, making him eligible for the death penalty. They settled on trying Raymond as an adult and ordered psychiatric evaluation at Bryce Hospital in Tuscaloosa. Months later, he was deemed sane to stand trial. When the trial began, the courthouse was packed with curious onlookers. Throughout the proceedings, Raymond displayed disturbing lack of emotion, spending most of the time seemingly emotionless, occasionally covering his face with his hands. Due to overwhelming evidence, witness testimony, material evidence, fingerprints, and his own confession, Raymond was swiftly convicted. However, the jury recommended mercy, sparing him from the electric chair. He received 3 life terms. Even during sentencing, Raymond expressed no visible emotion. There were no tears, no pleas for forgiveness, no indication that he felt remorse for the 3 lives he had taken. At 14, Raymond entered the Alabama prison system as one of the youngest inmates ever convicted of multiple murders. During his incarceration, he appeared to make the most of his situation. He studied to become an auto mechanic and participated in rehabilitation programs, earning a reputation as a model prisoner. Prison psychologists noted his intelligence, his ability to articulate thoughts about his crimes, and what appeared to be growing insight into the damage he had caused. He spoke about rehabilitation, expressed what seemed like genuine remorse, and exhibited behavioral changes the system was designed to encourage. In 1973, after serving 13 years, Raymond was granted parole. He was 27 years old and appeared to have genuinely transformed. The decision was not made lightly. Officials had observed his behavior for over a decade, noting his participation in programs, job skills acquisition, and apparent development of empathy. Upon release, Raymond returned to Ashland, living at his mother's house before moving to Montgomery, where he found work at an auto shop and rented his own apartment. For several years, his reintegration appeared completely successful. In the late 1972nd, Raymond developed a serious alcohol addiction that dramatically affected his behavior. While intoxicated, he began sexually harassing women and girls in the Montgomery area, exhibiting predatory conduct that escalated over time. In 1980, Raymond's behavior reached a terrifying climax when he raped his apartment manager while intoxicated. During the assault, he attempted to strangle her until she lost consciousness. Believing he had killed her, Raymond fled the scene. When the woman regained consciousness and contacted authorities, Raymond was quickly apprehended. Because he had violated parole conditions by committing this violent felony, he was returned to prison. The model prisoner, who had convinced experts of his rehabilitation, had proven that appearances could be devastatingly deceiving. Raymond remained in prison from 1980 to 1986. During this second term, he again participated in programs and maintained exemplary behavior, demonstrating the same intelligence and apparent insight that had characterized his first imprisonment. However, the 1980 assault had fundamentally changed how officials viewed his case. The sexual assault revealed a clear pattern of violence against women, suggesting his capacity for harm had never been eliminated. Despite these concerns, Raymond's behavior was exemplary. In June 1986, he was granted parole for the second time. The decision was even more controversial than the 1973 ruling, given his proven continued capacity for violence. Upon release, Raymond returned to Montgomery and found employment at another auto shop. For the first few months, he appeared to successfully reintegrate, maintaining steady employment and avoiding the alcohol abuse that had contributed to his 1980 crime. In late 1986, Raymond became acquainted with 3 one-year-old Linda Lamonte, a single mother with 1 0-year-old daughter, Sheila Smoke, and 6-year-old son, Aaron. Linda had no way of knowing about Raymond's violent past. Parole records were not public information. The relationship developed quickly. Raymond presented himself as someone who understood adversity and was committed to creating stability. His charm and apparent devotion to Linda and her children convinced her that she had found someone who could complete their family. In early summer 1987, Raymond moved into Linda's apartment. Neighbors saw nothing unusual, and friends considered him an upstanding citizen and positive influence. For several months, the arrangement appeared to work beautifully. Raymond seemed to genuinely care for the family, taking on the stepfather role with apparent enthusiasm. But beneath this facade of domestic tranquility, the same darkness that had driven him to murder as a teenager was still there, waiting. On the evening of the 9th of August, 1987, the mask finally slipped completely from Raymond Eugene Brown's face. What happened that night represented a level of violence and depravity that shocked investigators familiar with his previous crimes. Raymond attacked Linda first, stabbing her multiple times in the most degrading manner possible. The pattern of wounds in the vagina, rectum, and chest revealed not just intent to kill, but desire to inflict maximum humiliation. He made a 23-centimeter incision across her throat before slicing open her abdomen with a 69-centimeter cut spanning from her lower neck to the right side of her pubis. But the violence didn't end with Linda's death. He entered 10-year-old Sheila's bedroom, where he committed acts so heinous they defy description. He raped the child before stabbing her multiple times in the chest, throat, and abdomen, leaving the murder weapon embedded in her small body. 6-year-old Aaron, who was in the house during these attacks, was somehow spared. After completing his murderous work, Raymond engaged in behavior that revealed his psychological disturbance. He took a Polaroid photograph of Linda's corpse and attached it to the television screen. He scattered playing cards around the bodies and left a piece of paper with his victims' names and the word "me" written on it. When Linda Lamonte failed to show up for work and Sheila didn't arrive at school the following day, Linda's parents went to check on them at the apartment. The scene they discovered would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Their daughter and granddaughter brutally murdered, and little Aaron traumatized but alive amid the horror. Police responding to the scene immediately recognized this as more than a typical domestic violence incident. The level of violence, the pattern of wounds, and the bizarre staging elements suggested they were dealing with someone capable of extreme brutality and psychological disturbance. During the preliminary investigation, officers interviewed Linda's ex-husband, David, who provided crucial information. He told them that Raymond Brown had been at the house when he brought Aaron over for visitation. This testimony, combined with evidence recovered from the crime scene, quickly focused the investigation on Raymond as the primary suspect. An arrest warrant was issued, but Raymond had vanished. The manhunt that followed would become one of the most intensive in Montgomery County history as law enforcement agencies across Alabama joined the search for a killer whose violent history made him exceptionally dangerous. Investigators learned that prior to the discovery of the bodies, Raymond had been involved in a traffic accident in Walsboro, Elmore County. When traffic police arrived at the scene, he had given them his driver's license, described what had happened, and declined medical attention. He then retrieved a bag of groceries and a fishing rod from the trunk of his car and headed toward a nearby lake before his vehicle was towed to a parking lot. This information helped police narrow their search to a specific geographic area, but Raymond had a significant head start and intimate knowledge of the local terrain that made him difficult to locate. On the 12th of August, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, in conjunction with several other law enforcement agencies, began a massive search operation focused on the sparsely populated, heavily wooded area on the east side of Jordan Lake, approximately 25 kilometers north of Montgomery. The search was so extensive that authorities evacuated about 140 vacationers from the area to ensure their safety and prevent Raymond from taking hostages if cornered. The scale of the operation illustrated how seriously law enforcement was taking the threat he posed to public safety. Raymond Eugene Brown's freedom came to an end that same afternoon in a manner that was almost anticlimactic. After the intensive manhunt, he simply walked out of the woods to a service station where he bought cigarettes and a soft drink, apparently unconcerned about the massive search operation underway. The clerk serving him and other gas station employees immediately noticed his unkempt appearance after days of hiding in the wilderness. Their suspicions prompted them to contact police, who arrived quickly and arrested Raymond without incident. He offered no resistance during his arrest, displaying the same calm demeanor that had characterized his behavior after his 1960 crimes. When authorities examined his clothing and searched the interior of his car, they found drops of blood. Forensic examination later confirmed that the blood type matched that of Linda Lamonte, providing physical evidence linking him to the murders. At his trial, Raymond Eugene Brown employed a defense strategy that many found insulting to the memory of his victims. He pleaded not guilty to the murders, claiming that he suffered from amnesia and could not remember what had happened on the night of the 9th of August. To determine if his claimed memory loss was genuine, Raymond was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. The examination determined that he had an organic personality disorder, but was otherwise mentally competent and sane enough to stand trial. The evidence against Raymond was overwhelming and undeniable. Physical evidence, witness testimony, and his own actions following the murders all pointed to his guilt. The jury had no difficulty reaching their verdict on all counts. On May 13th, 1988, Raymond Eugene Brown was sentenced to death for the murders of Linda Lamonte and Sheila Smoke. After his conviction, he was transferred to the Hullman Correctional Facility's death row to await execution. The death sentence represented a recognition by the justice system that Raymond Eugene Brown was beyond rehabilitation, beyond redemption, and posed an ongoing threat to society that could only be eliminated through the ultimate punishment. Like many death penalty cases, Raymond's conviction set off a long and bitter appeals process that dragged on for years. His attorneys launched challenge after challenge, raising both procedural and constitutional issues, all in the hope of overturning his death sentence and replacing it with life behind bars. In 1990, they mounted their first major attack. They argued that Raymond's trial had been tainted from the very beginning, particularly during jury selection. Out of 66 potential jurors, 42 admitted they already knew details of the case through news reports and public gossip. His defense team insisted this exposure poisoned the jury pool and robbed Raymond of a fair trial. To drive the point home, they presented 53 newspaper articles, stories filled with details of the murders and Raymond's criminal past, proof, they said, of the overwhelming publicity that had surrounded the case. For a brief moment, it seemed their arguments had worked. The appellate court agreed and granted Raymond's appeal. His death sentence was overturned. For the first time since his conviction, there was a glimmer of hope. But that hope was short-lived. The Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office refused to accept defeat. They cross-appealed to the Alabama Supreme Court, the highest court in the state, and there, Raymond's small victory collapsed. The Supreme Court reversed the appellate ruling and reinstated the death penalty, putting him once again on the path to execution. The legal battle, however, was not finished. The appellate court stood firm, reaffirming its earlier decision and sending the case back for yet another review. The wrangling continued until a new trial was ordered, but at that retrial, the result was the same. Raymond was convicted on all counts and sentenced to death once more. Still, his defense pressed on. In 1995, they filed another appeal claiming bias in jury selection, arguing that the court had unfairly dismissed potential jurors based on social and racial prejudice. The circuit court dismissed the claim outright, finding no evidence. The Alabama Supreme Court later backed that ruling, closing yet another door. By the late 1992, Raymond's attorneys were running out of options, but they tried again. This time they argued their client had been denied his constitutional right to participate in jury selection. They even alleged that one juror had lied during the process. But once again, the appellate court struck down the claims, saying there was no proof, and even if true, it would not have changed the outcome. From that point forward, the pattern was set. Every remaining appeal was rejected. Claims of ineffective counsel were dismissed. Arguments that the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment were brushed aside. One by one, each court refused to intervene. In the end, Raymond's fate was sealed. The long fight through the courts had changed nothing. The death sentence remained. Raymond Eugene Brown died on death row in 2008, 20 years after receiving his death sentence. His death marked the end of a life that had been defined by violence, manipulation, and an apparent inability to feel genuine remorse for the suffering he had caused. Throughout his decades on death row, Raymond never expressed authentic remorse for his victims or their families. He never provided insights that might help prevent similar tragedies or assist law enforcement in understanding the mind of a killer. He remained until his death the same emotionally detached individual who had confessed to triple murder as a 4-year-old boy. Raymond's death brought a measure of closure to the families whose lives he had destroyed, but it could never restore the 5 women and girls who had died at his hands. Ivana Ogle, Ethel Ogle, Berta May, Martin, Linda Lamonte, and 10-year-old Sheila Smoke. The Raymond Eugene Brown case remains one of the most disturbing examples of the criminal justice system's inability to predict and prevent recidivism among violent offenders. His crime spanned nearly 3 decades and involved 7 victims, 5 who died and 2 who survived. Raymond's case highlighted fundamental flaws in handling juvenile offenders who committed extremely violent crimes. His ability to convince multiple professionals he was rehabilitated while maintaining capacity for extreme violence demonstrated calculated deception that challenged fundamental assumptions about criminal psychology. The failure to recognize his continued dangerousness after 1973 led to the 1,982nd sexual assault. The failure to learn from that incident led to his 1,986 release and subsequent murders of Linda and Sheila. Each decision to grant freedom had tragic consequences for innocent people. How could a seemingly normal 4-year-old commit such calculated, brutal murders? How did Raymond manage to convince so many professionals he had been rehabilitated? Should someone who commits multiple murders as a teenager ever be considered for release? Raymond's story suggests some individuals may be fundamentally different from society in ways current rehabilitation methods cannot address. His consistent pattern of violence remained unchanged despite decades of supposed treatment and reform. In examining Raymond Eugene Brown's crimes, we must remember the 5 women whose lives he destroyed. Ivana Ogle, 82 and disabled, died in her own bed. Ethel Ogle, 63, was murdered by her own great-nephew. Berta May Martin, 31, suffered 123 stab wounds because she discovered Raymond burglarizing their home. Linda Lamonte, 31, was building a stable life when she met a man she believed could complete her family. 10-year-old Sheila Smoke died in terror and pain. 6-year-old Aaron survived, but was left with trauma that would affect him forever. The woman Raymond assaulted in 1980 survived his attempt to strangle her, but carried physical and emotional scars. These victims represent the human cost of Raymond Eugene Brown's violence and the system's failure to protect them from a predator who should never have been given opportunities to harm again. The Raymond Eugene Brown case serves as a stark reminder that evil can exist without obvious warning signs, that rehabilitation cannot always overcome fundamental character flaws, and that the price of miscalculating public safety is measured in innocent lives lost. The Raymond Eugene Brown case stands as one of the most chilling examples of how the criminal justice system can fail to protect society from those who cannot be reformed. His ability to convince experts of his rehabilitation while retaining capacity for extreme violence raises questions that remain relevant today. If this case has made you think about the complexities of criminal justice and the challenge of accurately assessing dangerousness in violent offenders, please share your thoughts in the comments below. How do we balance the possibility of redemption with the need to protect innocent people? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime documentaries that examine cases like this one. Cases that force us to confront difficult questions about human nature, the limits of rehabilitation, and the systems designed to keep society safe. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous person is not the stranger in the shadows, but the one who has already proven capable of the unthinkable.